Hello and welcome to 81 All Out. I wanted to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of you who contributed to our COVID fundraising drive over the last 2 months. Late in April, we had announced that all the funds we receive in May and June will be donated towards COVID relief. And we had also promised to match your contributions up to a limit of $800. Our goal was to raise at least $1,000 towards this cause, which we said we will contribute to UNICEF that were doing great groundwork in India at the height of the pandemic and continue to do so now. We are happy to announce that we have exceeded our goal by close to $300, and we have contributed over the last few days. We have transferred the money to UNICEF. We appreciate that you valued our work enough to help us along the way, and I want to reiterate that we are really grateful for your support.
In the air, Srishan takes it. India win.
He'll come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series.
They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the 81 All Out podcast. This is Siddhartha Vaidyanathan, and I'm joined today by my co-host, as usual, Mahesh, who is at Cornered on Twitter. Hi, Mahesh.
Hey, Sid. Good to be back.
Yeah, and today we are thrilled to welcome back the veteran cricket writer and ace storyteller, Vijay Lokapally. Vijay has been a cricket writer for over 4 decades, and he's among my generation. He's fondly known as the cricket correspondent for The Hindu, for whom he worked for many, many years. And Vijay was also here early in 2020 to talk about his journey as a cricket writer and as a journalist. And I will link that. It was a highly popular episode, so please listen to it. Thank you so much, Vijay Bhai, for coming back. It's a thrill to have you.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. You actually, I owe it to you because the podcast which we did, that was the first time, if you remember, you called me and said there's a thing called podcast. I said, I don't know what it is. So you explained it to me. And from there began a series of podcasts. So many I've done. And it's all thanks to you. You introduced me to this forum. And that was indeed a good one because even I sometimes go back and hear it to convince myself that it's really me speaking.
Yeah, so, and now look at you. You're a Clubhouse veteran now. And you're saying you didn't know what a podcast was that time.
Yeah. Even this Clubhouse also thanks to Arjun Menon. I mean, he introduced me to it. And then, of course, you are there always. So your presence actually contributes. So, because you and I can chat very differently from the way they chat. So,
that is true. Yeah, so today we're here to actually go back a bit in time and talk about a series from 25 years ago. Still hard to believe that it's 25 years since India's tour to England in 1996. A very important and famous tour for several reasons, not least because it saw the entry of Sourav Ganguly and Rahul Dravid into Test cricket, but also because of the various other incidents that happened. It was also a turning point in Indian cricket in many ways. It was Azharuddin was the captain on the tour, and then after the tour, he ended up being replaced as captain. And then the team also ended up having a change. Venkatesh Prasad made an entry on the tour, and he too had a test debut, and he went on to have a pretty good career over the next few years. And he and Srinath ended up being a very potent bowling combination. So a lot of things happened on the tour. Also, of course, many controversies, which we will talk about. And no better person to talk about it than Vijay, who was on the tour and who covered the tour. So maybe we can start off with a bit of context about the tour and how, it was at a time around little after the World Cup in 1996. And that was a time when India was playing a lot of one-day cricket. I think the last test series was in October, November 1995 against New Zealand. And this was the first series after that. So it must have been going from one-day mode to test mode, right, Vijay bhai?
Yeah, it was. And if you remember, it was kind of a, what should I say? transition period for Indian cricket, getting in so many new players and the shift from spin to pace with Prasad and Kumble there, and Paras Mamre, if you remember, he was also there on the tour. So it was a new phase, beginning of a new phase, like you said it so well that at the end of the tour, Azhar was replaced. So the Sachin era was to begin. It did not pan out as we all expected. I mean, Sachin did lead for quite a while. But for Azhar, it was a very difficult tour because it was known that he had to win to kind of survive because it was too demanding. I mean, Indian fans are demanding, the media was too demanding. But the best thing was that you discovered two great players on the tour, and I had watched them in domestic cricket. Siddharth, we all had, and I'd been with them on a tour to Kenya, 1995. There was an India A tour, if you remember. Jadeja and Kambli, Sourav was there, and of course Dravid. But Siddharth, I would love to share one anecdote. I mean, before that there was a India A versus England A series, and I remember in Calcutta, I ran into Sourav outside the clubhouse at the entrance, and then he said, then we got talking, and he looked very depressed, and he was wondering whether he would ever get an opportunity to come back because after 92 he was ignored, na Siddharth. So here he was wondering whether there is a future for him as in Test cricket. So I remember, I mean, I had a long chat with him. Obviously, I said good words. And he did well in the series. And of course, subsequently, he came into the team. But you remember Shyam Sundar Ghosh from the Statesman, veteran?
Yeah.
And since I was there, he said, Vijay, what do you think? And what do you think about this boy, Sourav? So I said, sir, ye to pakka khelega and he's a good prospect, there's that. So he says, so should I write? And he wrote a big piece in Statesman, I remember on how Sourav Ganguly is a big prospect, this, that. But of course, he was a fantastic student of the game, Mr. Ghosh. So he brought in very, very good points. So from there, Sourav coming on that tour was not surprising. Everybody said Kota. If you remember, Siddharth, he was a Kota.
Yeah.
Kota
I think even the great Bedi Saab had some choice words to say about it.
Correct. So he was, it was very unfair. Unfair because as it is, his own players were hardly, encouraged. They were always overlooked by the selector. So here he was, and I'm so happy. We all are. I mean, whatever he did. But you are right. It was a tour which was coming after a lot of one-day cricket. So that was the biggest challenge to adapt to the English conditions and, of course, the 5-day cricket.
And also the other challenge would have been that because it had been 6 years since India went to England for a full tour, only a handful of players would have had experience of that. Of course, some of these players used to go and play league cricket in England, and they would have seen England, but playing a test series there is such a different experience. And only Azhar, Sachin and Kumble, as far as I saw in the scorecards, had gone to England before. So that would have been a new change as well.
Yeah, correct. And Siddharth, was Manjrekar there or not in 1990?
That is a good point. Manjrekar should have been there. He would have been there.
1990, of course, Kapil and Manoj Prabhakar.
Kapil, Manoj Prabhakar were the main, and then there was that Sanjeev Sharma.
Sanjeev Sharma, who got Gooch and he didn't. But
Gooch was dropped off his bowling.
Absolutely, Kiran More. So Kiran More says that was a sitter I will take 10 times out of 10. But he says last moment the ball curved. So that's where he,
possible.
Last moment he says the ball swung. With England, na?
Yeah. England and Lords is a tough catching ground also. People have said before. So
you're right.
That background is difficult.
Absolutely. So that was, you're so right. With so many new players and a new coach.
Correct. Sandeep Patil.
Sandeep Patil, I mean, he was a very different coach. So it was going to be very challenging. But the best part was, Siddharth, they got to prepare. I mean, if you remember before yesterday when you pointed out that so many tour matches were there.
Yes.
So that
And those were the days when, the typical England tour used to start off with the match against Duke of Norfolk 11, right?
I know. There was this game at Arundel, right?
Arundel, yeah.
Arundel, and very pretty place, and a whole lot of, more than a place. It was just a kind of an excuse for Indian spectators, those who lived in England, to come and meet the players, because there was hardly any restrictions. They could just come and chat with them. And I remember one guy coming up to Srinath and taking his autograph. And then he's asking Srinath, what's your name? So he says, you know what? He told him, Ramesh Gaitonde. Oh my God. And that fellow wrote Ramesh Gaitonde and went away. Can you imagine? You had such spectators also who would come and watch for Ramesh Gaitonde. I was standing next to Srinath. I had such a huge laugh. He could have, taken the autograph and then quietly found out who is he. Simple.
Yeah, instead of asking him directly.
Yes. Out of context, I'll quickly tell you one thing. There was this Asian track and field meet in Delhi where all these Chinese and Japanese and all these athletes would come, they would win. So my job was to do their interviews in 1989, and anybody would come now. So I would say, can you write your correct spelling? So from that, we would know whether he's a winner or a silver medalist or a bronze medalist. So those days were great fun, So they would write the correct spelling. So, but that game was a good beginning. Very beautiful ground, and driving to that place, coming back. Oh, and for me, Siddharth, all these years I had heard England, London, Lords and all those things. So when we landed at the Heathrow, I kept pinching myself, am I really here? Because to do a tour to England was a dream for anybody, I think.
Was your first tour to England?
Yes. 92, 91, I started traveling regularly. But that was my first tour, and I had gone with such preparation, reading about the players, studying about them. And you had to go to the library to, read about them. So I remember being in Chennai before we went. So I went to the library there, saw the earlier writings and about the players. So it was an education for me, Siddharth, that tour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and before the one-day series, there were 7 warm-up games, as far as I saw in the scorecards, and that is, of course, an era that is just long gone. Nobody is going to get 7 warm-up games in any big tour anytime in these days. But one of the stars of the warm-up games, I remember, especially when reading the newspaper, was the current Indian batting coach, Vikram Rathour, who was in such form during the tour games. My God, he was just getting so many runs.
He was getting so many runs and getting them the right way. It wasn't, you could not, later on they found flaws, right? In his technique, which was not correct. He just ran into bad patch. Very, very shocking, because that was, he was supposed to be, he would have ended up the find of the tour, if you ask me. And Rathour was rated very high by the coach, and selectors had picked him. So obviously they had faith in him. And I remember, Siddharth, now that you have mentioned this, there was I did an interview. Later I'll tell you how I did the interview. But at the end of the interview, Sachin, it was about best player for the future. Remember those questions we used to carry in the Sports Star? One page, your favorite, all that. So star of the future, he had put somebody else's name. And then next day when I went to the ground, Ali Rani said, Sachin is looking. I thought, what happened? Then I went there. He says, have you sent that article? I said, no, I'll be sending it today. He says, no, a star of the future put Vikram Rathour. So if you see that Sports Star of that tour and that one page, you will find star of the tour future Vikram Rathour. So that was how Sachin rated him, like you said, when he was getting those runs. And then, of course, he faded away.
And even before that, in North Zone, Vikram Rathour was seen as a Dada, right? Because Nishant Arora mentions that all those players in North Zone, they looked up to Vikram Rathour like he was going to be the next big Indian batsman.
Absolutely. One, his reach, he was a tall person and he could play the pace well. He was good against spin. And particularly, I loved those pull shots, He was so good in playing that pull. After a long time, we had seen somebody who would play the pull against the fast bowlers, play the cut so well, and his drives. And especially, he was kind of a complete, I would say, Siddharth batsman, the way he would leave the ball, right? So you're right about he being considered, they would look up to him as a cricketer for the future. So he was a Dada, no doubt.
So yeah, Vikram Rathour was a big story. Also, the other thing about the tour was that, something that is unimaginable today again is that India got the first part of the tour and Pakistan got the more important part of the summer, where they played the series and in the actual summer. So when India played, it was very cold. I remember players wearing 2-3 jumpers and rubbing their hands, and it must have been cold. You would remember.
It was bad. And Siddharth, if you remember Hove, it was so cold. My God, going to the ground was such a challenge, and those icy winds. And you just couldn't come and stand in the open. The press boxes, everybody would be so, sitting close to each other. And that's when you realize what was cold. And that is when I fell ill. The cold hit me. And I remember, like a stupid fellow, I went with just one jumper. And then it got, for 3 days I was lying on the bed. And Joseph Hoover was my room partner. So he looked after me, and Ali Irani would visit me every day. Ali Irani would come every day. He would massage, and he would ask me to sit in the bathtub with warm water and this and that. But I recovered after 3 days. So that's when I discovered, what really the English, when they say English weather is so unpredictable. That was it. Because when I started, it was sunny, and then it became cloudy, windy. So that was a very frightening experience for me, but a lesson.
First, I want to get to Azhar because it was a very interesting time in his captaincy and also his life. World Cup had just finished, and he was, of course, given a lot of criticism for that decision in Eden Gardens. Then there was that famous match in Sharjah where, he went and hit Ataur Rahman for some 25 runs, and then he went and made a signal to the press. Because that was the time when all the gossip about his personal life was going on, and they were criticizing him for his game was getting affected because of his affair and all that, and so he got very angry. And then on the tour, I think I remember reading reports about how his watches and his glamorous lifestyle was becoming quite popular among the team. At that time, of course. Me on the outside had no idea about what that would all lead to, but it was pretty clear it was a change. Something was going on in his life, right?
Yeah, it was. And also if you see, he was struggling in the sense he was not in the best of his form. The expectations were very high. Being Azhar, you had to look at him as Azharuddin, the artist, the magician at the crease. So every time he went out, people expected entertainment. And he was also, Siddharth, if you go back, he was also getting out to good deliveries. That was, it happens. When you are not getting runs, you get the best of deliveries. So that was one thing. And then, of course, the media was after him. BCCI was very keen on looking for an opportunity to install Tendulkar as the captain. So here, Tendulkar had a good series, I think 200s, and then he established himself as the premier batsman, and he was ready for the captaincy issue. So Azhar was under tremendous pressure, and you're right about these other stories were being floated by the media, of course. Media was being fed such stories. They were happy to lap it up, and then, of course, his personal life may have impacted because he had become withdrawn. Yeah, I could sense it. I mean, not just we could sense it on the tour. So there are not many moments you could...
More withdrawn than before? I mean, I thought he was always withdrawn. Yeah, but more withdrawn, you're saying?
More withdrawn, and probably more cautious of that this particular journalist, and he was, and I think people were not advising him properly. So, but as far as cricket is concerned, that should have been his own analysis, right, about himself. He would be, once you step out of the ground, all these stories you leave behind, So that was another thing. And maybe I'm not too sure if he was too happy with Sandeep Patil there, because he had a good rapport with Ajit Wadekar. So he probably took time. And then, I mean, as you know, Patil also went away after the series. So
yeah, and Patil, I guess, was also much more strong-willed. Ajit Wadekar was probably somebody who was happy to be take the backstage and allow things to move on, while Patil would have wanted a bit more control.
Sandeep Patil was strict. Strict, and he spared nobody, because he had no favorites, and he was clear. I mean, he was there to do a job, and he would not take any indiscipline. He would not tolerate any indiscipline from any quarter. So that probably, players were happy to see him go.
Yeah, and I also think must have been a different time, because if you read, when I was reading books by, Sanjay Manjrekar, VVS Lakshman, all their autobiographies, it becomes clear that, there was a clear senior-junior divide. It was clear that the hierarchies was very clear. Juniors could only do one thing. Seniors were always in control. So someone like Patil would not have stood for any of that. He would have wanted a much more democratic setup. But the players would have probably not found that encouraging.
Yeah, and you see how he picked the players, how he encouraged the youngsters. I mean, Rahul and Sourav should be thankful to Sandeep Patil. I mean, he could have... of course, I mean, he had no choice but to bring in Sourav once Sidhu went out. But to Blood Dravid, he was a big fan of Rahul Dravid right through that Kenya tour. Sandeep Patil was the coach, India 8 coach. So then he graduated to the senior team. So he was, and you're right, he would not take any nonsense. And so I think, if you remember, players had said had written to the BCCI that they were not happy with Sandeep Patil as coach.
Yes, and even without telling him anything, it was almost like they had gone behind his back.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So which hurt him always, and he had the same attitude later, Siddharth, when he became the selector. No nonsense.
Oh yes, yeah. Of course, that is another saga. But let us get to the big saga of the tour, since you have mentioned it. The great Navjot Sidhu. I mean, first of all, a player flying back from the tour. I mean, we had heard of Lala Amarnath, and that incident. But 1996, and for people like me from the outside, it came as a bolt from the blue. But I mean, Sidhu was, of course, known as this fiery character, and he would this. But then to actually get out and fly back from the tour, my God, please enlighten us. What was that all about?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story, Siddharth, and I would love to share it here, because I don't know if I've told it to share this with many people. I was in the press box when the attendant came and told me there's an Indian cricketer looking for you. So our Mohan heard it. So I looked at Mohan. He said, go ahead. So I came down. There were 9 Mongia waiting for me. And he said, Ki Vijay, Sherry bula raha hai. So and then I walked with him to the dressing room, Old Trafford. I went there. So this guy goes in and calls Sidhu out. So our Sidhu, Vijay bhai, मैं वापस जा रहा हूँ. I said, वापस जा रहा हूँ, किधर जा रहा हूँ? He says कि मैं इंडिया जा रहा हूँ, मेरा tour हो गया. And then Ali Rani comes out and he brings a letter which Sidhu had written. And I said कि he says जरा आप ये चिट्ठी पढ़ लो मेरी. Oh my God, that letter could not have been sent to BCCI at all. What all he has written. So I said, Sherry, ये तो नहीं होगा. But ये क्या हुआ है? Why? He says, मैं आपको बताऊंगा. But हो गया. I'm not going to stay. I thought this is very. I mean, imagine test matches had not even begun, Siddharth, and this guy saying, I'm walking out.
This was the third one-dayer, right? When I think he was dropped. He didn't play that one-dayer and he got really angry. Or second one-dayer.
Second. I think it was second. And yeah, so it was a very delicate situation, if you ask me. And Ali Rani said, "Isko zara samjha do." So he says, Ali Rani said कि इसको अजहर भी बोला है, संदीप भी बोला है, पर ये तो नहीं रुक रहा है. I said जब वो नहीं बोलने से रुक रहा है तो अभी किसी का बोलने से how is he going to stay back? But I said, Sherry, are you sure? He said, ये कोई नहीं बदल सकता my decision. Nobody can make me change this. I said, okay, but let me change the letter. Letter, at least let us send a proper decent one. So
it was filled with galis and all.
Not gali, what all he had written, my God.
Oh, all the internal matter.
Yeah. And then Ali Irani came back with a pad, and then I drafted the letter, signed it, I saw it. He says, ये तो जो मैंने लिखा है इसमें से तो कुछ भी नहीं है इसमें. I said, you are informing, you have to inform the BCCI. Obviously, there will be an inquiry. There will be an explanation. You just can't go away like this, nah. It's a big thing. And it was just not registering, that what he was doing. So ultimately, ho gaya letter. Then I came back to the press box. So Armon came to me. Then actually I went to Armon. I said, Mohan, this is the case. He's walking out. He says, what nonsense? I said, yeah. And then he said, what did you do? I said, I tried. I did my best because I and Sidhu go back many, many years. He's yeah. So I said he's not going to listen and he's going back. So he said, okay, then you do the story now, accept and do. I said, but let him go, no? I mean, because I wasn't sure whether if suppose they managed to kind of convince him to stay on.
Hold him back.
So he said, no, you write, at least you write the copy. I wrote the copy, almost half page, because Sidhu spoke to me. I said, Sherry, kuch bata to de. Then he spoke to me in detail. I wrote the copy, gave it to our Mohan. He subbed it, and it had to be hush hush. And then I went back to the dressing room to check where is he. So he had left. He had packed his kit bag and all. He had gone to the hotel. That hotel was some 20 kilometers outside the city where they were staying. And then I came back and told Mohan, he is gone. So he said, chalo, story was sent.
Send the story.
We sent the story, and then word came out that Sherry has walked out.
Left.
And now the journalists were obviously, they had no clue. I had a clue. I got to know because he called me. I also wouldn't have known. And some people next day went to his hotel, but he said nothing doing. I'm not giving any interviews. That was it. And he just walked out. Next day he went back.
But there has to be, there must have been like a simmering tension between him and Azhar or him and the team. Because you cannot, one match you don't get selected, people don't just walk out to go back to India.
Yeah, and later on, if you remember...
there was some... Sorry, 1 second. I'll probably ask Vijay about this. Because even during the 96 World Cup, there was some issue going on between Azhar and Sidhu. And after the quarterfinal innings against Pakistan, he actually makes a statement saying, I thank the people of India or something in general. Avoiding, crediting the team and captain. So, in fact, in the book War Minus the Shooting is mentioned that he had simmering tensions within even the Cup itself. Are you aware of any such history?
Not really simmering tension. See, such things will happen because Sidhu was a very, very moody guy. He would be very nice at 6 past 15 and volatile at 6 past 16. So, he was the kind of person who would, in a minute, his mood would change, right? So, but let me tell you, they had a very healthy relationship. Azhar and Sidhu, and they used to crack jokes. And of course, I mean, they had also been playing for some time together. So it was not that Azhar did not know Sidhu. So such things will happen. And Azhar also was, sometimes he expected you to behave like an international cricketer. So there were times when he would lose his temper and say a few things, but not to the extent where they will carry it and it will be kind of an enmity would develop between them. But here, the reason, if you remember, Mahesh, he said was he was not told that he was being dropped.
Okay.
Yeah, so which was not true because Sanjay Manjrekar and Sidhu were doing some exercise, where they keep their leg on the, what do you call the wall?
Railing.
Railing, and they were getting ready for the game. When Sandeep came and told them that you are not playing this game, both Sanjay and Sidhu. So Sanjay later confirmed that yes, I was told, and he was also told.
Wrote it.
So it wasn't that we had not been told. And inside the dressing room, Sherry padded up. So he thought he was going to play. So he was padded up. So that's what, infuriated Azhar. But nothing much. I mean, he just told him that you're not playing the game. So something snapped. And then he took this decision. That chalo bhaiya, ho gaya, abhi I'm going back. And Siddharth, if you look back, till today, both Azhar and Sidhu have not uttered a word against each other. You show me one interview of them, show me one statement of them where they have criticized each other. Never. Not once till today. I don't remember having read. I mean, I don't know I'm not aware if there is any, but I don't remember them making a public accusation against each other, not on that incident, let alone that incident, even otherwise.
Yeah, so Sidhu was the story of the early part of the series for sure. And, entering such a big test series, you have this incident. Obviously, that was playing on everyone's mind. And then you go to Edgbaston for the first test, which was a very, a friendly wicket for swinging and seaming conditions where you have to play against a pretty good attack. I mean, I wouldn't say great attack, but still, you have to face these bowlers on that wicket and the batsmen are not really equipped. So the collapse must have been predictable. Of course, you had one of Sachin's great innings that he played in the second innings. But So any memories of that? I'm sure you remember that innings, right? It must have been something.
Yeah, it was. And a flawless innings, Siddharth. He gave them no chance. I mean, if you see, and the ball was doing a lot. That Mulali was there, remember? That left arm?
Alan Mulali.
Alan Mulali, yeah. Alan Mulali. And it was a decent attack. You were absolutely right. Not a great attack, but given the conditions, it became a great attack. Because,
yes, exactly.
Because the Indians were not really kind of prepared. And Sachin was the only one. And he gave the tour... he gave the team the assurance that, at least he was in form right at the beginning with that 100. And what a classy 100 it was. And he dominated the second innings, if you see, whatever it was, 129, right? 129. And I don't know, some 220 or 210, the Indian team was all out.
122. I'm just looking at the scorecard. He scored 122 out of 219.
219, yeah, see. So that was, just see the number of runs he made, and then there wasn't much support. I think Kumble made runs, I don't know if you remember. Just see the scorecard, Siddharth. Kumble, in the second innings?
Kumble made 15, Paras Mamre made 15, and Manjrekar made 18.
Okay, right. Yeah, that's what. So he was the one who dominated, taking singles of the last ball, farming the strike. So he did that. I think it was, you are right, astonishing innings and probably easily among his top 10. It has to be among his top 10.
Yeah, easily. I mean, I'm looking at the scorecard. Chris Lewis, Dominic Cork, Alan Mullally, Ronnie Rani. Looking back, and if you see their stats, it may not seem like a strong attack, but the conditions and the context and the situation, and Indian batsmen hardly used to playing that kind of, all that made a huge difference to that test. Right?
Yeah. And Siddharth, this guy, Ronnie was very deceptive, Baba. They found him very difficult. They used to say, very hard to pick him. So
classic English, that medium pace, dibbly dobbling. Yeah,
correct, absolutely correct, absolutely. And of course, and this guy you mentioned, Chris Lewis, he was.
Yeah, and Dominic Cork was a very good bowler in those conditions.
Yeah,
he and that at that phase, I remember he was doing very well. He had a lot of wickets going on.
Correct, absolutely.
He had a stellar start in his career, right? He picked up 50 wickets in 11 tests or something like that, like ridiculously fast pace to the first 50 wickets. That was like the purple patch for him.
Yeah, that and I think he did very well against West Indies, very well against Pakistan. I mean, that he had some fine series at that time. Even many of the English journalists were talking very highly of him at that time. So Edgbaston also, I mean, again, that test had so many debutants. If you see, there was Alan Mullally himself was a debutant in that match. There was this spinner, Min Patel, who played for England. I remember Min Patel mainly because Tendulkar reached his 100 off a 6 of Min Patel. Sunil Joshi, of course, another debutant. And of course, the forgotten debutant from this series is Venkatesh Prasad, who had such a good series both in England and later in South Africa. It was a revelation for many people. He had, of course, played a bit of one-day cricket, and he had a fantastic domestic record in that season before that. And, tall, fast bowler. I mean, people may dispute the term fast, but still, very sort of a challenging bowler to face in certain conditions because he had good seam movement, good control, and very neat action also. So you felt that he could have a long career. So yes, by memories of Venkatesh Prasad from that.
Venkatesh Prasad. Before that, Sunil Joshi you mentioned.
Sunil Joshi.
That injury, I remember from the press box, Armand told me, Vijay, can you just walk across to the dressing room and check on Joshi because I heard an ambulance coming in.
Oh.
Can you imagine? I mean, that was R. Mohan. So I said, okay, Mohan, I'll go. I went there. Then they told me that they had taken him for a scan.
Okay.
Joshi had been taken for a scan and it was hairline fracture and his tour was over.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunate. He had to come back. So that was a blow at the start of the tour. Just like Srinath, remember? 1997 tour to the West Indies.
Yeah, West Indies, right?
Montague, the first game practice, this thing, he aggravated his injury and went back. So he was not available. So here, Sunil Joshi going back was one. But Venkatesh Prasad, Siddharth, he bowled true to the expectations of Kapil Dev because Kapil was very fond of him. And I remember Kapil going to Bangalore because somebody had said, hey, there's a wonderful bowler who has arrived. That was 2 years ago before we went to England. And Kapil was raving about him. High arm action, right? And his right arm very close to the ear, beautiful action he had, very smooth and very deceptive, good slower one, everything that a fast bowler should have. And Venki used it also. I mean, he developed as a bowler, and that tour, how many wickets did he take? I think a good some 15, 20 wickets.
15 wickets.
15 wickets, yeah.
I thought 20. So that was good in 3 test matches. And he was bowling to some really good batsmen who play swing very well, right? So his forte was swing, and he was able to get good seam movement because he would pitch the ball up. So he would beat them so often, Siddharth. He should have ended up with 30 wickets, if you ask me. The number of times he beat the bat. So Venkatesh Prasad was a treat to watch. And the Englishman loved him.
Yeah, and also Venkatesh Prasad made a very good point much later. He said, when people talk about Indian bowlers going to England and South Africa and other conditions, and they say, of course, you have to get wickets in those conditions, but they don't realize that the amount of swing and seam is so much in those conditions that to control it is a big challenge. In India, it is easier to control because the movement is much lesser. So, but there, your ball is beating the bat by 2 feet. Yes. You have to find the edge. So that is the biggest challenge in England.
Absolutely. So that is what he had. You are so right. I mean, for Prasad, the challenge was to control his swing. So he did work on it towards the end. He had come to, he understood very well how to bowl in those conditions. And he was the find of the tour. I mean, if you look at India's bowling, he was absolutely brilliant on that tour.
Yeah, him and Paras Pambre were the two prospects for that tour because both had done well. But of course, Prasad ended up getting more wickets and having a much longer international career. And Paras, he couldn't sustain that for much longer. Though Paras, in domestic cricket, of course, was a fantastic bowler for many years after that and led Mumbai to a Ranji Trophy also in 2002. So that happened. And also the other debutant, as I see, is Vikram Rathour. We spoke about Rathour, but he also made his test debut in Edgbaston in that test. So, that was, and also the thing about that test was it was the only test that had a result in that series because the next two tests ended up being draws. And so, and India had no chance to then come back after that. So Correct. It was,
Correct.
Which brings me to
question on the third seamer point. Vijay bhai, you might be close to Manoj as well. So Prabhakar retired after the World Cup. And in the previous test that India played, he opened the batting and the bowling. And for someone like him, you could have been a very handy third seamer to Srinath and Prasad in England. Did you have a chance to talk to Prabhakar after that series to see, if he regretted the decision?
Before the series, when did he retire?
After the World Cup itself.
After the World Cup.
So we did have a chat that there's England tour coming up. That will be the tour for you. You've been there before. He was there in 86 and 1990, both the tours and the right kind of bowling. But this guy was convinced that they will not pick him. So that was the reason he took this thing. He said, "Mere ko off spinner bana diya." Remember, he had to bowl off spin to Jai Surya. So he was convinced that they won't pick him, and because there was no way he would have taken back his retirement. Because I and Rakesh Rao, we drafted his retirement letter in Delhi. So that was another story. Someday I'll tell you, but. He was not willing
Vijay,
to.
All the things you have drafted for players should be in one whole book for Sidhu, for Prabhakar, for this.
Yeah. Vikram Rathour's retirement also at the Press Club of India.
Really?
Mohinder Amarnath.
Oh, retirement.
Ferusha Kotla, the letter. And Maddipa. So many of them. Bantu Singh, KP Bhaskar, many of them, Siddharth, because those days they didn't have managers, and they sought help. Like there would be senior writers in the South who were drafting retirement letters for cricketers in the South. Similarly, in Bombay also, senior journalists have drafted their retirement letters. So no big deal. But because of my good relationship with them, I was kind of made the retirement letter expert. And we were late. In fact, Manoj Prabhakar, the retirement letter was brought by Rakesh Rao a little late because he was getting them Xeroxed. They had to be Xeroxed, na? So Manoj Prabhakar said, where is the letter? The whole media was there. Then Rakesh came with the copies because he had the letter with...
I'm imagining, now that you're mentioning Manoj Prabhakar, I'm imagining Manoj Prabhakar in the middle of Sidhu and Azhar and everything over there.
Oh,
That would have
baapre.
been a maramari. That would have been a wrestling match going on.
Oh, yes. Both volatile, Manoj and Sidhu. They had a ladai in Sri Lanka, if you heard. Yeah, you would have read about it.
I remember that. Yeah.
Colombo, over a Rasgulla ka dabba. I think one of them, I don't remember, he dipped and took out the that Rasgulla. Either it was Sidhu or Prabhakar. So if Prabhakar had done it, Sidhu said, "You have spoiled it. You've dirtied it. You have corrupted the bloody all the other Rasgulla by dipping your finger." Oh, hilarious! He said, "तू हाथ नहीं धोया है और तू हाथ लगा दिया उसके अंदर." Oh, hilarious it was.
And of course, the temper of both of them, my God.
Yeah. And the fire brigade, who were the firefighters? Prashant Vaidya, Dayan Mongia, Both were scared of coming and trying to stop the bloody fight. Too good.
Vijay bhai, last time when we spoke, after we spoke, and then after, reading about all these North Zone players from the 80s, being in that dressing room in the Delhi or the North Zone dressing room of the 80s would have been something. I mean, there would have been fights going on everywhere.
Yeah. We saw some fights somewhere out in the open, so everybody saw it, not just
Raman Lamba and Rashid Patel, the famous one.
That was at Jamshedpur, but there was one Maninder Singh and Manoj Shubhakar in the middle in a match.
Oh.
Steel trophy cricket match. Yeah.
Oh, an actual physical fight.
Bat and stumps and Maninder and Manoj. Another time there was Manoj Shubhakar, Maninder in the dressing room. They didn't hit each other. Maninder kicked the chair and how they went on and on. So Bishan Singh Bedi sir saw it. Hemu Adhikari was the coach of services team. So there are so many such incidents, Siddharth. Those days.
They must bring they must bring a tear of joy to Virat Kohli's eyes.
Oh, yes. They would fight. They would have the arguments, and next day they would be, kind of.
Next day, all fine.
Yeah, all fine. Manoj Shubhakar, Sherry roommates.
In the lead up to Lords there was this tour game against Derbyshire that India lost. Actually, and Dean Jones was the captain of that team, and they needed a small target to chase in the final innings, and he basically sent Devon Malcolm in to humiliate the Indians, almost saying that you are so bad that even Devon Malcolm can come and chase this score for you.
Yeah, and India lost by 10 wickets.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's because since you had told me, I checked the score because I wanted to know who was the tailender. So Tim Tweets, I saw this name. He was a regular opener, but this Devon Malcolm, he had bowled also. He had done well as he had bowled also very well, and he came out to open. But there were three things quickly. I tell you, Siddharth. One was Devon Malcolm coming to open and at the end of it taking autographs of every Indian on that bat. He came to the Indian dressing room with his bat and took the autographs of all the players.
And boy moment.
Absolutely. So one was that. And one was after the game was over, I had to stay on for Azhar column. And the firing the team got from Sandeep Patri. You could hear it outside. So I moved away because it was embarrassing. They were being fired like school students. And I just went away, and then I saw once the thing was over, then I came at Azhar. But I'll remember the game for very different reason. I had to remember, I told you about that feature I had to do, best batsman, best bowler, this, that, best magazine we used to carry for Tendulkar. So suddenly Armon said, "Dear Vijay, you'll have to do this here only because we have to give it to the Cricketer magazine also." Same thing. They have some tie-up. Okay. And Sachin had told them no, that he won't do it for them. I said, okay, since it was our office asking me. So I told Sachin, now we got there and suddenly he was surrounded. So you know where I did the interview? No. Inside the ground.
In the ground.
In the ground, yeah. In the ground, next to the stumps. We were just a little away from the stumps, maybe 5 yards away from the stumps, because we knew nobody would come enter the ground, to disturb him. So he took me, we went, sat there, I did the interview, and then, suddenly he saw the umpires were walking in. He says, umpire aale. So then we came out. By then, of course, I had finished the interview and we were just chatting. When I came out, Peter Roebuck was there, if you remember. Peter Roebuck called me, says, I have never seen an interview like this. This guy, we are chasing him, and you do this interview sitting next to the stumps. I said that was his idea because to keep the crowd away. So he says this is amazing, and he was also writing for the Cricketer. So then R. Mohan. That was the time I met Peter Roebuck, and I became a huge fan of his. Great writer. So I remember Derbyshire for these three incidents, and also after the game, I and Azharuddin walked back. He was so furious. He says, "Abhi chalenge and baat karenge," for that column which I told you. So we're going back, and so he on the way he showed me, "Ye mera restaurant aata tha, main udhar hi khata tha," because he
used to play for Derbyshire.
Yes. So I remember that walk, and he did not mention anything about the game. He was very angry, but my column was on something else. So these my very fond memories of that Derbyshire game.
Anyway, so coming to Lord, so all this drama happens. Sidhu's gone, Edgbaston match is gone, and so now finally because Sidhu is not there, a place has opened up, and then Manjrekar injury happened, a place has opened up, and Vijay bhai, I saw in your I think you had tweeted a little while ago that newspaper clipping that of the day before the match. And that is a lovely report to read now, because it gives you the context of how things were at the time during the tour. And I can of course link that put that link on along with this. But the first line is very interesting. It says, "One man, Sourav Ganguly, earns his place through merit, and another, Rahul Dravid, may find himself in by default because of Manjrekar's injury." but all these years later, reading that is interesting.
Yeah, you remember it. My God, yeah, correct. It was.
No, I don't remember. I read the article.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Right. Yeah. And I remember meeting Sourav because Sandeep had told me that he's making a debut tomorrow. So I met him, and he wasn't sure. But then, of course, he was also told. And I remember that picture. I think if you remember, Siddharth, I don't know if you have that cutting. I think Vivek Krishnan took him to sit on a roller. Or was it a grass cutter machine? I mean, that cart, something like that.
It was actually this particular image that you have. He's sitting in the chairs in the stands.
So that was a posed one. I mean, I remember Vivek Krishnan telling him to, yeah. So those days you could do it, Siddharth. You could tell the player, come and stand here, come and do this, wear the helmet, remove the helmet.
And for them it was important also. They wanted a good picture in the paper, no?
Yes. I remember Rahul Dravid coming to Guyana, landing, and within 5 minutes we called him, took him to the seaside, because Vivek Krishnan had to send the cover picture that day, and I had to do the cover story that day. So we could do that, but Sourav was so happy to make the debut, and that too at Lord's, and Siddharth not at all nervous. Yeah, he did not look nervous at all, and the way he batted, it next day.
Yeah, and we of course seeing the highlights of that. It's even now it is so stunning to see some of those shots, and I don't know. I think because apart from Kambli, I don't remember the last left-handed batsman who played for India, and Kambli had a very different style. Kambli, was this high back left and this bit of more short arm jab. But here you had this player playing these absolutely gorgeous cover drives and, just making batting look pristine.
Yes.
And on debut at Lords, I mean, everything just came together like a dream. It was just dream script.
It was made for Maharaj.
Exactly. Yeah.
The Prince of Calcutta, and better known as Maharaj among the media in Calcutta. And you're so right. His stroke play, and it was not a revelation there. He was always like that. I mean, all those guys who watched him in domestic cricket, he looked very different, and he looked very, enjoyable. It was a joy to watch him bat, and being a left-hander, of course, again, he had to be very graceful in sight, and the shots he picked, the ease with which he could place the ball in the gaps, Siddharth, amazing, and very little of effort. If you see, even the sixes which he has hit in his career, long sixes, you won't see it is not that he is making an extra effort to hit the ball. He could just he would time the ball so beautifully, and he could pick the line very early. So he was such a joy to watch, and I was so very happy for him. A year earlier, we had a chat at the Eden Gardens where he was unsure, apprehensive of his career, whether it was done, whether he had any chance. But here he was making such a fabulous debut. At the home of cricket, as they say, where some of the many great batsmen have never made 100.
Yeah, I mean, and more than anything, it was like, here's this player who has been so doubted. He has been criticized. His selection itself has been a big thing. And for those who had not seen much of him in domestic cricket, like me, to then see this, it's like, what was the doubt about? This fellow should have been playing cricket for so long. What is going on?
Exactly. And he was very unhappy with the way he was treated or ill-treated on the World Cup assignment. And he could have stayed on and played. He should have been on the tour, which was unfair. And then, how many years lost, Siddharth? 5 years?
4 years, right? 92 to 96. Yeah.
96. 4 years were lost. But once he came back, he showed you what kind of a mistake the selectors had made about him. And media calling him a quota candidate was very, very unfair, very unfair. And he never said a word. He used to feel bad about it, definitely. There were times when he would express, but he never said it in public. He was hurt when they called him a quota candidate. But you look at his domestic record, he was doing well.
Yeah. And as if to prove the point that this was no fluke, he made 100 in the next test.
Yes.
So there was, even in Nottingham, he went and made 100.
Correct. Absolutely. And Dravid missed making hundreds. Lords
in Lords, correct. Yeah.
There also.
So, and
in both. No, he also scored 80.
In Nottingham also. Yeah. Nottingham also. Yeah.
He got how much?
84, I think.
See, another 16 runs he would have got.
Yeah. So that Dravid was also interesting because he batted mainly with the tail in those matches, and he was batting lower down the order, and that was equally. Of course, but I think Dravid was a slightly different in terms of expectations because from the last 2-3 years, everybody was raving about him. He was technically already been compared to, the former greats. People were saying, he had this Gavaskar-like patience and technique. He had scored well. 96 World Cup, he was expected to be picked, but he didn't. And then he had played some one-dayers. But as you mentioned, he, for no fault of his, he couldn't do well in one-dayers. He got run out. He got a very good ball. He got stranded, I think, in one match also. So they were, but it was, what I'm trying to say is Dravid was not a shock to see he was doing well because it was almost like he had taken the next step from domestic to international cricket.
Yeah, correct. And he did belong to that stage. If you remember, Siddharth, you go back and see there was this innings and the Irani Cup at Ludhiana, I think. I did that game and he did exceptionally well.
I think he had a moustache then. Yeah.
Achha, I don't remember, He and Nayan Mogi did exceptionally well. And from Ludhiana to Baroda, Nayan Mogia I saw him leaving with the luggage. I said, Abhi kidhar ja raha hai? He said, station ja raha hu, train se jana hai wapas. after the game, Ludhiana to Baroda by train. So those were the days. But Dravid was always acknowledged as he belonged to that. He had the class to play whatever he did.
Yeah, and the thing for us, actually, in India, this was also a novel experience for us as a tour because we got to see quite a few of the tour matches. I think Prime Sports or maybe it had already become Star Sports. I'm not sure, but they were. It was Star Sports. They showed a few games. We got to see the English county, the county grounds, all these players who we would have not seen otherwise, because they didn't play Test cricket. I think there was this one-day match against Northamptonshire that was shown. It was quite interesting match, and so it was a different experience as a TV experience also, right, Mahesh? You remember much of that?
Yeah, indeed. A couple of things. One, there was a time when satellite television was getting into its sort of full fluency in terms of, quality video, quality audio. I think Harsha Bhogle was there. In fact, I still remember the Lord's Test was Dickie Bird's last test. And the first sort of 5 minutes or about 10 minutes that Harsha actually does the commentary is one of like the gold standards of TV commentary. Like, in fact, when Harsha first came on Twitter, I reached out to him saying, I remember that piece in the 99, the Chennai Test piece that he does at the end. So in that sense, the quality of cricket coverage had never been higher in India. Even with the World Cup, it was not so good. And you had access to the English grounds, which, like you mentioned, we had read about, but we had never seen. The other factor is also the quality of television itself was going up in India at that time, because that was the time when India had, opened up the markets for all your LG. At that time, it was called Lucky Gold Star, I guess. LG and all the foreign TVs to come and set shop and sell, like, for instance, bought a Sony TV just at the time, just before that series. So for me, like if I look back at it in my memory, the 96 World Cup and that phase was a different image. That was the BPL image. And this particular series was the beginning of the Sony image in my mind.
I did a big interview of Dickie Bird. He was very reluctant again. And I don't know, Siddha, I was lucky because Ted Corbett, if you remember, he used to write for us.
Yeah.
So he told Dickie that to speak to me. So that's how I got. Yeah. Otherwise, Dickie was very reluctant. So,
okay. Yeah. Ted Corbett, of course, is a famous name for all the readers of Hindu. Yes. He used to write about England for many, many years. And yes. In fact, he was our window into English cricket for many years, because Ted Corbett used to cover the Ashes, cover so many of the England series.
Correct. Absolutely.
So from Lords, they went to Nottingham for the third test. Again, a batting pitch. They batted first, and Ganguly and Tendulkar got hundreds. Tendulkar, again, another very different 100 to Edgbaston, but fabulous innings. Fabulous. And tell us a bit about, Tendulkar through that series and his popularity and his stature. In England, of course, there would have been so many Indians and even English people, I think, were genuinely fond of him, right?
They were big fans of him, other than the Indian supporters. But his biggest fans were the journalists in the media. Yeah, they would look for some angle and write about the man, the way he would walk to the middle was a story for them. The way he would interact with the kids, again, was a big story for them. And then his awesome batting. They were convinced that he would do nothing wrong. They couldn't really. They used to say, okay, incoming ball. But then incoming ball, I think, even Bradburn, maybe, I don't know, maybe he also may have had some weakness at least, right? So incoming ball, it was not that Sachin could not play. Right. So that's the only flaw. If you can call it a flaw. But then in later years, he covered it up. The incoming ball also was not making much effort. But Sachin would always look to to make an impact in England, because for whatever reason, he had good memories of the first 100 in 1990 in company of Manoj Prabhakar. And then, of course, this tour happened.
And Yorkshire also. Played for Yorkshire also, no?
Yorkshire
Before
also.
That, yeah.
Yeah, correct. Was he not the first overseas player ever, right? For Yorkshire, yeah. So all those memories. And he loved those county grounds, I remember many conversations where he would talk about this ground, this speciality about this ground, And I remember that match against Hampshire at Southampton, the old ground, not the...
Yeah, not the AGS Bowl.
The old ground where surrounded by houses, where Barry Richards, I'm told, wrote 1,000 windows there and Gordon Greenwich. So in that game, Siddharth, I remember Sandeep Patil coming and saying, "Come, I'll show you something." So I went with him. In the back of the dressing room, there was Malcolm Marshall bowling. To these batsmen, and they were hopping around. Imagine.
In 96? Wow.
Yeah. And bowling from a short run-up. I can never forget that sight. And I remember who was with me, who came to watch that. Narendra Hirwani, who never played a game on that tour.
Oh, yes, he was on that tour. Yeah.
Remember, he was there. Azhar didn't play him any test match. So he was supposed to be a leg spinner, no? Englishmen have a weak neck against leg spin, so he never played. But Sachin...
Just curious, why did India pick 4 spinners for the tour? Just curious, I don't remember the context now. They picked Raju, Hirwani, Joshi and Kumble.
No, they had how many fast bowlers? They had 4 fast bowlers.
They had 3.
Srinath, Prasad, Mambre and one more was there.
Yeah.
Ankola was replacement for Sidhu.
Ankola never played. He didn't play. Ankola was playing somewhere, so they brought him. But was there no 4th seamer? Are you sure?
No. Yeah.
Oh, that's very...
In fact, Ganguly was filling in as the 3rd seamer when Mambre was...
but Ganguly was the seamer. He was bowling regularly at that point. If you remember, he was bowling. So maybe that could be one of the reasons. But Hirwani was brought because he had been there in 1990, right? He had some experience of English conditions and he was supposed to be good. He was bowling very well in domestic cricket those days. And so-called weakness of English against fast bowlers. Against leg spinners. And then Kumble had to go. Kumble was emerging as one of the best in the world, right? And Venkatpati Raju brought in that variety.
And Joshi was seen as an all-rounder. In fact, Joshi had more runs in domestic cricket than Rahul Dravid in the previous season.
True. Very true. Yeah. And he fancied himself as an all-rounder. If you talk to him today, he will reel off some great innings he has played in domestic. He was a key bowler, but then he got injured when came out. He had to return. And Trent Bridge, one thing I remember, Siddharth, I would love to share is there's a bookshop outside the Trent Bridge ground. Now it is gone. I was told it's not there anymore. And I discovered that shop. I bought some good books. Then I came back to the ground. The team was in nets going on before the test match. And I told Rahul that, Jam, there is a very good bookshop. If you are interested, you can, visit the shop. He says, I'll if I find time. And after the nets, when I went, he was already there. He was already in the bookshop. Looking for books. Then I said, Jam, you were supposed to come back later. He said, no, I had time. So then he said, just pick some books for me. So I bought a lot of stuff. And he used to... I think some 10-15 books he bought that day, Siddharth.
Yeah.
Just like that.
The joke was that he used to ask journalists and teammates to take books for him because his luggage, there was no space in his luggage given the number of books he used to buy.
Yes, absolutely. I remember that day, which I told you, West Indies, when he landed, and he said, "What are the books you brought?" I said, "Which is the best book you brought?" I said, "Wings of Fire." And he said, "Can I borrow?" And he read it. He took the book right at the beginning of the tour, and I think he finished it. It took 10 days or so, and he returned it. But voracious reader.
Yeah, voracious reader, and he used to love England also for so many bookstores. He used to pick out books. He used to say, in fact, when he used to play for Kent and all these, when he used to Scotland also, he used to love it because you finish the game, go back to your room and read. Full evening you just read, and then the next day you play again. Yeah.
Correct. And see, and I remember he said he would like to have books on the history of the game, cricket in England. So I picked up books, and there were Neville Carter's which I hid from him. Because in my previous trip to the bookshop, I had missed out this Carter's. So I kept it for myself, and the other books I gave it to him.
In 2007, actually, in that famous series that he was captain in India won, he was reading and he had read that book, Meaning of Sport by Simon Barnes. And he loved that book. And so he said that, I like this book so much. Can you request Simon Barnes to give me an autograph copy? So I said, sure. But then what had happened was that Simon Barnes was not covering the final test at the Oval because he was going somewhere to do the Rugby World Cup. The Rugby World Cup was starting. So he was going. So then I contacted Simon and I said, listen, he would love an autograph copy. Can I meet you somewhere and get it? He said, tomorrow morning I'm going to go to France, but you can meet me at the railway station. If you meet me at the railway station, I'm more than happy to this thing. Because he was packing and he was getting ready. So I met Simon Barnes at the railway station in King's Cross or something, where he was boarding the train to London or getting a autographed copy of his book for Indian captain.
Arey baap. Fantastic. But look at his interest. Look at Dravid's interest.
Yeah. No, and he cricketers and fans now may not relate, but he had such a respect for journalists, writers, people who covered the game. And even, he understood that the challenges that they went through. I mean, these days, players don't even talk to the media. But, that was a different era when people empathized with the challenges.
Yeah. My colleague Rakesh Rao has gone to watch a movie with Rahul Dravid and Sourav Ganguly sitting in a cycle rickshaw.
in abroad or India?
Lucknow.
Of course, India, I guess, cycle rickshaw. Oh, Lucknow. Wow.
Yeah. So those were the days.
So they went from the hotel room to the theatre in rickshaw?
Yeah, in a rickshaw, cycle rickshaw. Hasratganj or somewhere, yeah. Very interesting.
So let us wrap up by talking about what happened after. So Azhar loses his captaincy because India has lost the series. Sachin, in fact, Clayton Murzello, a good friend of the podcast, and Clayton Murzello from Midday relates this great story where they landed and he wanted an interview with Sachin. But then again, just like you, so many journalists are there. So how do you get an interview with Sachin? So Sachin said, okay, you come with me in the car. You sit in my car. We will drive and I will give you the interview in the car. So he's driving in the death of the night at some 3 a.m. in the morning and Sachin is giving him an interview. And in that he told him, I am ready for captaincy. And so that became the big story. Then Sachin becomes captain. Srinath and Prasad, of course, then become the set combination. Ganguly, Dravid are now set in the middle order, go on to have fabulous careers. So quite a turning point in the aftermath of that tour, right?
Oh yes, after having watched the beautiful county grounds of England, having bought so many books from all those visits to the... Siddharth, you've been there, all those county grounds, they sell old books. Second-hand.
Oh yes, second-hand books. Yeah.
So I got quite a few there. And then we were off to Holland, if you remember. We played 2 matches.
Oh, yeah, the second part of the tour. Yeah.
We went there, I and VV Krishnan. So, I mean, it was great fun. From there was a Schiphol airport, Amsterdam. I and VV we went in the team bus to The Hague. So we were part of the team. Imagine, for those 4-5 days, we were like Indian cricketers, I and VV Krishnan, staying in the same hotel, going to the ground in the bus with them. But those were different days. You could do it. If you were there, you also would have traveled in the same bus. But when we came back at Heathrow Airport, I did that Sachin story, and I filed it from there, where he said, "I'm ready for captaincy."
Yeah.
So and then Azhar always held it against me that, because you did the story, it kind of, I said, see, because the story you didn't lose captaincy, it was just that I got to know that they were thinking of a change. And I asked Sachin, and he was also there at the airport when I spoke to him, and Sachin was very reluctant. He says, "Are you sure? Will it not give wrong impression that I'm trying to I'm kind of what should we say, campaigning for captaincy. I said nothing. It's just one quote. And then by the time we got back, Azhar was not the captain anymore. Sachin had been appointed, and it's another story. Someday we will talk. Azhar came back as captain.
Yeah. That, of course, Sachin's captaincy didn't work out as well as it should have. And then so many things happened, including 81 all out. And, and Azhar came back after
Correct.
that. Yeah.
And then again Sachin got it, and then again Sachin left it. Remember?
Correct.
So that was a very, 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 I don't know, very strange period it was, Siddharth, for Indian cricket. So many things were happening.
I'm curious about Sidhu's pretty quick return to the team in, again, West Indies in the 81 all-out series. I mean, he missed that South Africa. But he came back pretty soon. Usually with BCCI, the way it was working, even someone like Kamli, for instance, could never make a comeback. So, like when you mess up things like that, typically in Indian cricket, you don't get another chance. But Sidhu seemed to have turned it around pretty quickly. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, he did, because his cricket was not finished, if you remember. And did he not get a double 100 on the tour when he came back? So it was again Sachin. Azhar was not instrumental in he going out, and he was not instrumental in he coming back. But Mr. I.S. Bindra was a very respected cricket board official at that time, if you remember, Siddharth and Mahesh. So he played a key role in Sidhu's comeback, because whatever Sidhu must have told him, and Sidhu did apologize. I mean, Sidhu did feel bad about it, and he came back. So whatever time he played, how many years did he play, Siddharth? Another couple of years after that? Yeah.
He, I think, by 99, I think
98
he was done.
After that,
98 was probably New Zealand.
Yeah. After that, I think he quit. So Mr. Bindra played the role in getting Sidhu back into the fold. Otherwise, it was tough.
Yeah, and even Manjrekar. I mean, Manjrekar, after the injury in England, gradually his career also sort of petered out, and he ended up being, of course, he led Mumbai to Ranji Trophy in '97, but never got a chance to really come back and do much for the Indian team.
Correct. He was... Yeah, he never played after that?
That Ahmedabad test, which Lakshman debuted, I think Manjrekar might have played that match.
I remember selectors wanted him to open. He said, I'm not going to open. That's not my place. And then later we were told that he had written to the selectors that he was willing to open.
Yeah. No, he opened. He opened in his last test, which was the Ahmedabad test that City mentioned.
Okay. So that became his last match.
Yeah. That became his last match, because Lakshman did well in that match, and then after that you had Ganguly, Dravid, Lakshman. Then it became they would have decided to go with someone else. And Manjrekar also, by then he says also, it was tough for me to I was not really getting the runs that I needed to make it to the team.
Correct.
Yeah, and Mamre also. I don't think Mamre ever played for India after that. He probably. That was it. That was the end of his international stint. It's amazing. After that, after 96, India next went to England in 2002. Again, another long gap. And by then, 2002, I mean, Sourav was captain. And by then you had this new crop that was coming. Zahir Khan had already started making a wave. So it was amazing. 1996, 2002 are almost like three different eras in Indian cricket.
Yes, absolutely. And then began, I think, the golden era. Would you say that? After 1971, this era with Sachin, Dravid, Sourav, right? And then, of course, Zaid Khan, Sehwag, all those guys, Harbhajan.
Then after that is when India started winning tests abroad. Forget series. But they won at that test in England, that famous win in Headingley. They won the test in West Indies. They won in Trinidad. They won a test in Australia. So I think that was a slow. And Sri Lanka also. They won in Kandy, that famous win in Sri Lanka. So,
correct. Imagine Siddharth, an in-form young Azharuddin playing for India in 2002. Imagine, I mean, with this magic, along with these great players, it would have been a sight for gods, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Even his last test was fantastic. Right? His last test 100 was phenomenal.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
Bangalore.
Test, yeah.
Bangalore, yeah. I remember. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I did that match and I remember. My only test match at Bangalore. Oh, and he was so happy to do the column after that 100, you know. I remember, sitting in the balcony and taking notes, and he went on and on and on and on. But sadly, in last test match.
But talking about that 96, was it too early? I mean, were you already hearing things, or was it too early for the whole fixing and other stories? 96 in England.
Oh, we heard it in 1991 in Sharjah.
No, that is true. But I'm saying on this tour, 96 England tour, were you getting any? No.
No. There was no such thing. Even though people would mix up with the players, they would go out with all these cricket fans or people whom they knew. There was no anti-corruption, anything. But people don't remember that the first big story on this fixing thing was done by Mr. K.R. Wadhwani.
Yeah, in 91, right?
91, he did a cover story. I went on the tour and he didn't go on the tour, but he got a cover story for Sports World on fixing and match fixing and this and that, corruption in Sharjah. So there was a big story then. I remember.
Yeah. And the other thing in that, during in that time, especially in England and all, would have been that because the players were not getting that much Indian food, they would have been mixing with so many Indian families. Families used to invite them home. Whole team used to go to people's houses to eat food. And in that, they would meet some shady characters also, invariably.
True. Very true. But most of them, they would take care of mixing. And also, who would come and take pictures with them? They're very, very particular. Yeah, they would refuse. See, going and having dinner is okay because the host is known to you, but not the guests he has invited. And suddenly, one of them would come and pose with you and then claim, "What do you do?"
Is this series after Sachin signed up that 5-year contract with Worldtel, right? He got a 25 crore deal or something with Worldtel, right?
Yeah, Mascarenas.
Yeah. So he'd been he'd always been a cricketing superstar, but after this he was also a commercial superstar, right?
He was. I mean, he always was. Even before that, he was getting all his deals for bat and whatever advertisements he did. But after this, of course, he became a big commercial attraction.
25 crores was unheard of in cricket at that time.
Absolutely. And the best thing is, he remained grounded. I mean, anybody would have kind of, lost his, focus because of the kind of money he was making, but he remained grounded. His focus from cricket was never taken away by these distractions, commercial distractions, I mean. So that was the best part of Tendulkar.
Right.
Yeah. But I think all I would say is before we go, that I think every journalist should get to make one trip to England to understand cricket.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, more than anything, it also teaches you the rhythm of, there's such a different rhythm of cricket. When you just go see there, listen to the chatter, listen to the sound of the bat and the ball in those grounds. It gives you a different perspective of cricket.
Especially county grounds. One, you are so close to the action, very few spectators, it's quiet. I mean, it's not a noisy place, if you see. And those quaint surroundings, you are kind of sucked into that kind of atmosphere. You want to watch the whole day. And those people coming with their own lunch boxes, right? Drinks, scorecards. They write down scoreboard. Brilliant it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that is a very important point. They actually they have this elaborate scorecard in front of them and they note down every ball.
Yes.
And if you distract them, they will give you the fiercest stink eye look saying, what are you doing over here? So that it shows that they are there for focus. They are very serious people and you don't have no business to go and disturb them when they are watching the match. I would seriously recommend one book that came out last year. It was written by this English journalist called Ian Ridley. And it is also a very sad book. I will link it. I think it's called The Breath of Sadness. It's called The Breath of Sadness. Okay. It's a very sad book, but it's also a very beautiful book because Ian Ridley lost his wife to cancer. And he was undergoing a very depressing phase in his life at that time because he was coming to grips with the loss. And then he decided, and then he was taking therapy. And then his therapist asked him that, you are going through a tough time, but is there anything in your life you have wanted to do and you have not done? So Ian Ridley told that therapist, I have always wanted to watch one full season of county cricket and I've never got a chance. So he said, do it now. What is stopping you? So Ian Ridley took a whole season off and he decided, I will only watch county cricket.
Oh, great.
And this book is about that season of him watching county cricket and coming to grips with the loss of his wife. It is a very beautiful book. It also tells you how cricket can be very therapeutic when you watch it. And you can also, because it offers you so much introspection time, you're also constantly thinking about so many aspects of your life and so many ideas come to you, and it's a way of healing. So he uses cricket as a way of healing. It's a very beautiful book. I think it won some awards in England and it has been very well reviewed. So I will link it. So please read it. And hopefully I can get Ian Ridley on this podcast to talk about the book.
That will be great.
In fact, Dodda Ganesh, who I'm hoping to get in this podcast, Dodda Ganesh, who's a very, now he's a Twitter star almost. He has become a Twitter celebrity. He said, I wish there was somebody who could do exclusive domestic cricket podcast. And I said, that is a great idea. And so if any of you listening, want to take that up, please do. And Dodda Ganesh will be more than happy to give you his inputs. And I think it's a fabulous idea. I think the Indian domestic cricket or domestic cricket around the world is a great topic for an entire podcast.
Oh, I didn't know this. He's become an internet star.
You follow him on Twitter, sir.
We follow each other, but how come I don't get his notifications?
Oh, you should definitely see. He is very forthright with his opinions. He's one of those cricketers who does not hold back. He criticizes. He also talks very frankly about his playing days. So he's really opened out. In the last few years.
Brother.
Yeah, he used to call everyone brother. Correct.
Does he blast fellow players? No.
Now I think that side of him is a little mellowed down, but he used to.
Okay. That'd be interesting. Yeah. I should check up.
Vijay Bharadwaj, actually, who was also on the podcast, talks about Dodda Ganesh and his love for the fight. I mean, he was in the same Manoj Prabhakar, Maninder Singh camp, going after players.
Vijay Bharadwaj's episode was damn good.
He's a lovely storyteller, lovely talker. Anyway, Vijay Bhai, thank you so much. This was a treat and lovely to remember the series that I cannot believe it's 25 years. I mean, we are all growing so old. It is amazing.
That brings us to the end of another episode of the 81 All Out podcast. If you enjoy the work we do, please support us via coffee.com. That's ko-fi.com/81 All Out. You can find the link in the show notes, and it will allow you to either set up a recurring monthly payment or throw in a one-time contribution. Also, please subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever else you prefer. It would be great if you could leave a rating and a review so that more people can find us. As always, we would love to hear your thoughts on the work we do. So please send us your feedback.